happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
You're listening to Arkansas Preps Weekly on Natural State Sports, your top source for the biggest news in high school sports across Arkansas.
Here we go.
What is up, everybody? Thanks for joining us on episode number 41 of Arkansas Preps Weekly here on the Natural State Sports Network alongside Kevin Bohannon. My name's Kyle Sutherland, and it is week 2 of the playoffs, round 2, quarterfinals for some, whichever you prefer. It's the round 2 for Class 3 and 4A, and then the quarterfinals for the rest, or I guess semifinals too, if you count 8-man. But Kevin, nonetheless, we had some great games and honestly, maybe a few more good game, really quality matchups than we expected in round 1. But, and most of those you do expect some blowouts, but I think we were kind of pleasantly surprised on a few of them.
Yeah. And we expect 85% winning percentage, clip rate, whatever you want to call it, for home teams. And that's where we were at this week. You had 11 road teams go out of the 52 teams. So home teams were 41-11. And we had some great performances across the board, across every classification. Not too many surprises, some things that we thought would come to fruition. And I say that between you and myself and Barry Grooms. I felt like we were kind of in tune with what would happen this past Friday, and got some really great games coming up this week. So a lot to look forward to. Can't hear you.
Crap. I'm sitting here bragging on myself about how I've formatted the graphics right this week. Keep in mind, I'm still getting used to our fairly new software. And as I'm sitting here bragging on myself, talking about how I've lined up the graphics, I forget to do my typical unmuting of mic. So now that we got the mistakes out of the way, we will go ahead and head into Class 7A. And Kevin, like you said, they're maybe somewhat I wasn't super shocked by the Bentonville West Little Rock Christian score. Man, what a performance by the sophomore linebacker Quentin Lavallee. Forced 2 turnovers, returned 1 for a score. That was really the difference in the ball game. And then also, too, another thing that stands out to me, freaking Scott Reed in the playoffs, man. It doesn't matter what Cabot or any of his teams do. I think back I think it was the 2021 season when they were pretty good during the regular season. I know that they struggled a good bit, probably more so this year than any under Scott Reed at Cabot. But when it gets to the playoffs, you just can never count him out. They win 33-32 over Springdale. Junior Devin Hayer hit a 22-yard field goal with 17 seconds left. Springdale had actually taken the lead on a field goal with about 4 minutes left in the ball game. So I think those 2 games were really the ones that stood out to everybody probably.
Yeah, we expected the 4-5 matchup, Springdale Cabot, to be one of the best games of the week in 7A, and it lived up to it. I was watching the end of it, Cabot driving down the field. They got to that 17-second mark. Of course, they kicked the field goal, like you said. And, we expected Bentonville West and Little Rock Christian to be a little bit better ball game. I think Bentonville West really kind of controlled that ball game from the outset. They never looked back. They're playing like the team we thought they would. We thought they'd be. We thought they would, challenge for that 3 seed, and they come in, playing down a little bit. They got the 5, but they're playing good ball right now. Now you get a chance to shock the world with a crosstown rival. Beating Bentonville this week. Rogers took care of business, setting up what is expected to be, along with Fayetteville and PA, the games to watch in Class 7A in the quarterfinals. I just think that Rogers, their offense runs through Jeff Regan, and he's had multiple games of over 500 yards combined offense. So if they can slow him down and they can score a little bit, which we know they can, if Conway can score a little bit, they'll have a chance to get back to the semifinals. PA and Fayetteville is intriguing because we talk about, and we've been wrong on this before, that we expect this game to be played in the 60s or what have you. Pulaski Academy looked really good on Friday night. Their defense came out. Harbor had been playing well on offense of late. They scored, quite a few points down the stretch. They had that 65-point game against Farmington earlier in the year. PA made them look very pedestrian. And then, of course, Brandon Cobb has done his thing. Week 10 against Little Rock Christian, over 500 yards total offense. He's going to be a 3,000, 1,000 guy. That doesn't come along very often. So, him taking that game to the next level, they get to see it this weekend. Coach Anthony Lucas, I talked to him on Friday night, and he's like, it gets tougher every week, and that's what they're here for. So they have a chance to do something big against Fayetteville on Friday to set up a rematch with what we assume will be the Brighton Hornets.
And the rematches this week, you kind of touched on it a second ago. So Cabot, Bryant, Central members, West and Bentonville, crosstown rivals, essentially. I say rivals. I mean, obviously West hasn't been around that long, but crosstown foes, I guess would be the appropriate. But both of these, or all four of these teams, so Bryant, Cabot, and Bentonville, and then Bentonville West, they played less than a month ago. Both of these, because that was in kind of the back. I think actually Bentonville and Bentonville West played in week 10. So that was a matter of 2 weeks ago. And then Cabot Bryant was about 3 weeks ago. So, obviously I think that just about anybody's going to pick Bryant just with the way that they looked in week 10 in that matchup. I still like the way, Bentonville it wouldn't shock me if Bentonville comes out just a little bit rusty. I think they're going to win the ball game, but just having that week off and them being in that rhythm of winning 7 games in a row, it wouldn't shock me to see Bentonville come out maybe a little bit rusty and then possibly run away with it. Yeah, a slow start and then win it. But Conway Rogers, I think you nailed it. I think that could be an offensive shooting. Conway has had a really good defense. Other than the Bryant game, they've had a really good defense this year. But, a guy like Jeff Regan is we all know how tough it is to defend dual threat quarterbacks, but just with what he's able to do, that's going to be a very tough task. But PA has just been extremely impressive. I mean, they have overachieved, if you ask me. I mean, again, we thought that they would be right there along with Little Rock Christian competing for a playoff seed and, that 4 or 5 range, probably at the worst. But them getting the 3 seed and how you talked about it, Harbor's played a little bit better, but 51-7 at
Quickly.
half.
It was
quickly.
They put 44 in the first half.
Yeah. I mean, the offense has just been what it is. Brandon Cobb using his legs more so this year, and they've taken what the defense gives them. A lot of teams have tried to use that Little Rock Christian method of dropping 7 or 8, and then they use Brandon's legs, just taking what the defense gives them in those situations. But Fayetteville Pulaski Academy, I mean, that's probably, to me, the top matchup on paper here. And it would not shock, I mean, call it Central Arkansas bias if you want. It would not shock me with how inconsistent Fayetteville has been this year for PA to go up and knock them off on the road. Yeah,
I agree with that. And you got to look at trends and how teams are playing, towards the end of the season. Fayetteville, and I've heard a lot of people, and I've even thought this a little bit, maybe they peaked a little early. They played okay down the stretch, but I'm sure Casey Dick would agree, not up to their potential. So, they have to, especially with what happened again in the Bentonville game. So, both teams have taken their beatings this year. PA not so bad when you consider, look, they gave Bryant all they could for 3.5 quarters. Bryant pulled away late. Key with Pulaski Academy right now is they're healthy. That's one thing that is on their side right now going into what would be week 12 of the season. It's hard with a roster of their size going against these 7A schools that have 85 to 100 kids with a 4A roster with, maybe 60 kids out there. So good thing is they're healthy. They got Svoboda out there. They got, defenses playing opportunistic. That's one thing that Pulaski Academy always hung their hat on is, look, they were going to blitz. They were going to be opportunistic. They were going to try to take the ball away to get more possessions than the other guy. And, I was talking to a couple of coaches on Friday night that the offense has not really missed a beat under, Adam Thrash. He is dialed in. He knows his X's and O's. He knows how to put points on the board. So expect a shootout up in Washington County Friday night. You're muted again.
Oh, son of a biscuit. One of these days I'll get it perfect. Class 6A, a lot of close matchups. That was, really from top to bottom. And I know we only had 4 games, but pretty much all of these. You look at it, of course, the Russellville, El Dorado, 38-31 over Russellville. Lake Hamilton, which could be a lot of people are expecting them to possibly be a dangerous team as we go on into the play, get into the quarterfinal round, 41-27 over Jonesboro. Kevin Van Buren, we talked about this last week. I just saw this coming from a mile away. They rallied to take down Marion on the road. They went 4 hours across the state, won 29-26. The Patriots actually took a 26-22 lead with just under about 3 minutes left, I think it was. Then Van Buren took a long kickoff into Marion territory, and then Hayden Williford connected with Elijah Jackson for the 16-yard score with a little over 2 minutes remaining, and then the defense did the rest. And this week I'm kind of putting that same kind of I have that same thinking a little bit towards Catholic, the other C.
Yeah,
Catholic has, as good as they have been in year one under Richard Cock. When you think back to that Sheridan game where they escaped 51-58 or 51-48, frankly, haven't looked that great since that game. I know that they beat Sylvan Hills, and they've had some wins in there, but their Week 10 matchup against their Sylvan Hills matchup. That game was 7-6 going into the fourth quarter, like until early on in the fourth quarter. I don't know that having a week off is going to benefit. Now there might be some injuries that I'm not aware of that, they could possibly be short up. Now, the one thing about Catholic this year, last season when it was pretty much the Brooks Ward show that was Jackson England's top target, you've got about 2 or 3 guys that have proven to be worthy of good pass catchers, and it's more of just by a committee this year. But I'm standing by what I had said about Mountain Home, because I think that I said last week that they've got a really good path to me. And even though Sheridan gave them all they wanted, they've got a pretty good path to the semifinal round, getting that 57-50 victory. Jacob Shenowitz playing just great ball right now. I know he broke some school records that were back to you got to go all the way back to the early 80s, 1983. Had 223 yards, 5 touchdowns, also had 2 interceptions defensively. And then, Isaiah Stevens from Sheridan had a good game as well. He countered with 134 yards and 4 touchdowns. But on top of the West dominance over the last 5 years, of course, credit to our guy, Neil Denton.
18-2.
18-2 over the past 5 seasons in the first round. So I think that's going to continue. And, we could be coming on here next week and eating our words. We're going to be eating some words here once we get down to Class 5A in a second. But, I felt very confident that Van Buren was going to go on the road and knock out Marion, who just really hasn't played very well in the past couple of weeks. And again, I know a win is a win, and Catholic's gotten some of those in the past few weeks, but I just think that Mountain Home's playing better ball right now.
Absolutely. And, 9-2, best record in, history. And we were talking about that the other night, just how much the West has dominated. And whether when Benton was in the West and, you just had to deal with everything else, it was like the top 5, teams in the Class 6A were all going to come from the West Conference. And especially, PA, Little Rock Christian, Greenwood last year, they just keep filling up. And Lake Hamilton's playing better. The question has been, can Lake Hamilton beat Benton? Well, I think they can. Will they? Probably not. We don't know if Drew Davis is going to play. Baby Cobb did good. Little Cobb did really well 2 weeks ago. So that was, should be a really good matchup. But yeah, I'm with you, man. Mountain Home has just showed everybody, and especially you go back to that first half with Greenwood where it was close, 14-0. They did what they could. They held Shiloh in check for a little bit until they exploded in the second half. But they feel like they're always playing with the chip on their shoulder, even when they're 9-2 in the season. And to maintain that, throughout the season is tough. I talk with a lot of baseball guys, and I've had a lot of guys that continuously played with that chip on their shoulder, but they were great teammates and they were always on point. And it's just, to have that for a season is special and takes a special athlete. So you can look no further than Greenwood for some of those guys. It's easy to rest on your laurels and be complacent, lose focus, but those guys haven't. They're going to take on an El Dorado team that can put up points, but this is Greenwood, man. So I don't expect anything right there. You and I talked about this. We weren't shocked that Van Buren beat Marion. Yeah, they had to go 280 miles or whatever it is. But the way Marion had been playing, we know Van Buren had come up and had some good opportunities this year. They started out by beating Alma and then, got through the conference. They got through one of the toughest conferences in the state of Arkansas. as the 6 seed. So it doesn't surprise me that a 6 beats a 3 in that instance. So you could be looking at, some of the matchups that we anticipate happening will kind of get to come to fruition again next week, should everything work out all right.
Then on down to Class 5A. Let's go ahead and just eat our crow now.
Yeah, great job, Momel.
Man, I got to say this, and I mentioned this on Twitter. Now, Greenbrier, it's not like it was obviously it was a 10-9 ball game, so defensive battle. Not really shocked. I think probably the biggest thing that I'm shocked about is how well Maumelle defended Enoch Hassan. I mean, nobody has done that to him this year. We knew that they had a really good run defense. Coach Mop has really hung his hat on that all season, and rightfully so. But the call, if this would have been like week 5, week 6, I would have been, or really just any kind of regular season game. Maybe I know that the last 3 weeks of the regular season, Maumelle was competing for a conference championship, so there was a lot on the line there. But the simple fact that their season was on the line with this one play, you got the ball on your own 10-yard line, and people can say whatever they want about Brian Maupin, but they cannot say that this guy does not go to bat as much as any coach for his players, whether that's in recruiting, whether that's on the field, whatever the case may be. His defense proved, as the defense has been has been the strong point, the more consistent unit. There's no question about that. So he knew what his defense could do. This was a way for him to tell his offense, I don't care what's happened before, that you've been shut out, that you've had these struggles or that struggle. He kept his offense out on the field in a must-convert situation, 4th and 1 on your own 10-yard line, and could have easily said, now, I don't know if maybe it was the offensive coordinator, Carter Burcham, who was possibly initially said that, but it wouldn't be shocked if it was Mop's idea because like our man Dan Campbell, or as I like to call him, Dan Gamble, you go out there and you play to win the game. And that's just really what it boils down to. They didn't want to have to worry about Greenbrier driving down the field to possibly get a field goal. He just sent his guys out there. He told them he trusted them, and they came through, and now they're on to the second round, to the quarter.
That's exactly right. And they had 3 touchdowns called back, I believe. One of them was late in that fourth quarter on that same drive where they converted that 4th and 1 from the 9 or 10-yard line, whatever it was. But the punt that set that whole situation up by Greenbrier was beautiful. And I'm like, man, this is going to be an 11-10 ball game. They got a little bit on first down with Jacob Henry, got out there, and when you talk about intestinal fortitude, Brian Maupin epitomizes that right now. So, they're allowing right at 200 yards a game. They're allowing under 100 yards rushing on the season, and like maybe 120 yards passing. That's ridiculous. That is ridiculously good in 5A football. That's up there with some great numbers considering everybody's scoring 40, 50, 60, 70 points a week. So, for them to do that, take away the Parkview game, talking about one of the best defenses in the state of Arkansas. So, they got a lot to prove this week. That game, of course, is going to be moved to J.A. Fair. And for the listeners and viewers out there, it's a different J.A. Fair. It's completely done press box. The field is all turf now. Little Rock School District put some money into it, and it's a different field. So they had the option of going to Thursday night, playing at War Memorial Stadium. Didn't want to do that. Personally, I wouldn't want to do it either. This is a playoff game. You want to have the same schedule, the same routine for your guys going into, and especially if you're playing a team like Parkview, who's the number 1 team in the state, have that day to prepare for them, even though you've already played them already. So, kudos for them to get it worked out on a Friday night. I would have done the same thing if I was in Maupin's shoes. So there's going to be some chippiness in this game. There's going to be some talk, and just like there has been, the previous 9 weeks, between teams that have played each other. So a lot to look forward to there. Valley View struggled a little bit. It was 30-22 at one point, pulled away late. Morrilton talked to Coach Cody McNabb for in depth on Friday night, and him being a defensive guy, I finally asked him, how is this for you? How is it seeing that team you're scoring 75 points and losing the ball game? How do you cope with that, basically? And he's just like, that's where it is now. It's like adapt or die. So they've gotten really good at throwing the ball and catching the ball. So they know that they have to outscore people now, and that's where they're at. So it looks really good. Kyle, I was at the Robinson game. I don't see anybody stopping Robinson. I know Lakeside played them very well earlier in the season. It was a 2-score game. Robinson jumped out early in that game, held on. I think it was 26-15, some weird score like that. But Braden looked really good. Malachi Muhammad had a couple of touchdown catches. Deuce Williams and Thomas in the backfield looked extremely good, and that defense is fast. I mean, when you got guys that are coming off the edge, Valonia had no shot at blocking them, and they played fast. The problem was the back end of their secondary. If they play a really good, sophisticated passing team, they may run into trouble. Their D-backs get caught with their eyes in the backfield too much, and Valonia had 2 long touchdown passes on them when they were able to get the ball off. So that's kind of one of the things. And they weren't in press coverage at the time. I believe they were supposed to be in a cover 2 shell over the top, and just safeties just got caught with their eyes in the backfield. So they're the only team that can beat themselves on the road to War Memorial right now. And then shout out to Camden Fairview and Nick Vaughn, man. They did what they had to do to slay the dragon. Neil Evans' club moving up to Class 5A for the first time. Owen Miller, great career. I think he ended number 6 or number 7 all-time in yardage for a guy that wasn't supposed to start his sophomore year. 75% completion percentage is outstanding. So great season by Harding Academy, but Camden Fairview showed that that guy in the 5A South is still really strong.
Yeah, that Fairview Harding game, we called it for the buzz. Of course, we were making up from week 8, and that was one of the things that I was going to point out is, Owen Miller. I got to – I think it was Thomas Thrash from the Hootens account that had talked about how he had seen his first ever 7-on-7, and he saw his last game. I had the privilege of that as well. I was there the first time that he played 7-on-7 when he actually was the starter. Or actually, I guess, at this time – him and Cade were split because this was before Cade and Smith had stepped away and focused on baseball. But I mean, Owen Miller, man, he was taking some shots. I mean, he took a lot of shots the other night, but as he typically does, he just continuously got up. That game, the score is not quite indicative of really how that game was. It was really 2. So it was 20-10 Camden Fairview with about 2, or it was about 1:30 left in the first half.
The 2 defensive touchdowns.
That's right. Camden Fairview had back-to-back scooping scores within a matter of like 50 seconds. And really after that, it just Harding Academy did make a little bit of a push in the third quarter, but it was just too far gone. I mean, Camden Fairview was the best. And you would expect Camden Fairview by the time that Harding Academy gets up to Class 5A, and I know that myself and many others had a little bit higher expectations for them, but the reality is when you're a lower level school playing Class 5A just because you've been successful, I mean, it's going to kind of reach ahead at some point. That's kind of the reality of it. But then also too that the team that Camden Fairview is going to be playing now, Farmington. I know they're a 1 seed, but we talk about this team is no ordinary 3 seed, kind of like how Camden Fairview is no ordinary 3 seed. This team's no ordinary 4 seed. Well, Farmington's no ordinary 1 seed. Yes, they have proven their worth all year. They're on a 10-game win streak when you count the week 1 Harbor forfeit. But this was not supposed to happen, Kevin. And I think the 5A, we also got to give a little, but you and Barry mentioned and Randy the other night, probably got to give the 5A West a little bit more respect. I know you look at Valonia and Robinson, it's lopsided, but you talked about how Valonia got a couple of plays over the top, plus you've got Morrilton in, you've got Farmington. But Tommy Tice, it's hard for me to imagine, and we still got some time to figure these things out, but it's hard for me to imagine how he's not unanimous coach of the year. With just what I mean, it's just, and you don't want to solidify that right this second because we've still got a long way to go. But man, I mean, Coach Tice, just one of the most respected coaches to ever walk the sidelines and argue. He was around well before, definitely well before I was born, before you were born as well. I think he's been a head coach, his first year was like 1972 or 3 when he was in his early 20s. So just truly one of the best to ever do it. Very happy for him. But yeah, I think we've got some great matchups here. As you mentioned, Robinson Lakeside, that's a rematch from this earlier in the non-conference. Yeah. And you've got, of course, Robinson was up, I think it was 17-0 in the first half of that game in week 1, 2, whenever it was, and then Parkview was just up 9-0 on Maumelle and then really opened the floodgates in the second half. So a lot of good matchups here as we get into the 5A slate. Let's head on down to Class 4A now. So I think one of the big ones, so there was two that really stuck out to me. Gentry 42-41 over to Witt. Shout out Talon Williams, great player that's missed a lot of time this year. Hit Ezekiel Strong with less than a minute left. Williams finished 15-24, 400 yards and 6 touchdowns to no interceptions. And then also another Region 8 versus Region 1 matchup. Hamburg goes 5+ hours to Northwest Arkansas.
6:14, I think, on the Yellow Dog is what it was.
Was it 6-4? Okay, on the yellow. Okay, yeah, on the Yellow Dog for sure. It's probably over 6. I think it was. I did it. It was about 5:15, so that makes sense when you think about a stop or two plus going on the Yellow Dog. And Peyton Sellers, one of the state's leading tacklers, I know had a big game. Nykel Lewis has been another one of their players this year. Which thank you, Blake, for putting your stats, and the coaching staff for putting your stats up, so that way we know these things. Over 1,800 yards on the year, about 25 touchdowns. We talked a little bit around the beginning of conference, just because of some of the parity, really before Warren heated up with the current team that they have. There was a good bit of parity, and for the most part over the season, there was in Region 8. But, Kevin, you really have to give it to credit Hamburg for just the progress that this team has continued to make. What are they at 8 or 9 wins this year, and took, I would say, probably the longest road trip of the first round of the playoffs. If not, it's certainly top 3, no question about it. So those two matchups right there pretty much, because I think most people probably had DeWitt taking down Gentry and probably Gravett taking down Hamburg. Gravett said a couple of weeks ago they're a very young team. They've got a lot in front of them. But those were the two games, I think, probably in 4A that really stuck out to me, along with Malvern, their comeback win over Pottsville, 28-27.
Yeah, Peyton Sellers, it was his 4th game of the season with at least 20 tackles. He also had 9 carries for 216 and 3 touchdowns on the night. I mean, just outstanding two-way performance by the Hamburg line. Nykel Lewis that you mentioned, he was his sturdy self. He had 26 carries, $140, couple of touchdowns. He also had a 70-yard touchdown reception. So, Hamburg went down and took care of business. Now they get to take on Monticello. You talk about, Region 8. I always joked about it being the SEC East. Conference 7 was always the SEC West of Class 4A. So those games, you really stick out to me. And like you said, Talon Williams, over 400 yards, 6 touchdowns. We talked to Tyler Clark the other night, and he was just so ecstatic about his team. To go down and take care of business like that showed just really how tough that the 1-4A, pretty good balls played up there as well. Prairie Grove beating Lone Oak, that was another example. They beat them 37-33. So they showed that the 1, can hang. It's not just Elkins and everybody else, like a lot of people say it is. So, for those teams to get those wins, it was really big. Heber Springs hanging on to beat Blytheville. Blytheville came in, played tough. Caleb Carmichael, the Buffalo brothers, Liam and Eli had great nights. Pocahontas, I want to give a shout out to the Redskins, Casey Chester. They get a signature win, and I'm sure by the time this comes out, this is Black Monday in high school football around the state of Arkansas. Coaches are asked to move on to better pastures, sometimes, so to speak. And you'll get some news on that, when this comes out, I'm sure. So Pocahontas 28-13. Quarterback had 48 carries, 268 yards, 3 touchdowns rushing, also had a touchdown passing. So outstanding performance. Got some good games to look forward to, Kyle. We talk about Elkins and Mena, Malvern and Highland. That's intriguing to me. But Mills and Clinton, you want to see a 1 seed get beat. That's a good chance this week. Sorry, Comets.
And two completely contrasting offenses. We talked about this last week. How would Mills respond? Because you felt like that with respect to Gosnell, you felt like Clinton was going to win that first round game.
They're playing good.
But and Mills is just. Give them their credit. That's one of our networks. We follow them very heavily. But I'll tell you, Kevin, this is just. I don't like this matchup for the Comets. I mean, especially if they keep Eli Moody in the pocket and they basically just at least slow him down. and they play and then Clinton plays its offense the way that it knows how. I think Ryland and who's their other running? They both went over 100.
Zach Hunt.
Zach Hunt, yeah, Zach Hunt and Ryland Jones both went over 100 last week, and I think Coach Dufresne had said, if I'm not mistaken, either last week or when y'all did the Sonic Blast from there, that they were close to like 3,000 yards rushing as a team or something, which isn't shocking in this offense.
Yeah, they were up to like 2,800 as of that night.
Yeah.
So or 2,500. So they're well over it now.
And also, man, we've talked a good bit about Arkadelphia because they've been, one of the favorites all year. But Kevin, this is a scary team. When you're playing defense the way that they are, and you've got Bryson McCoy as a sophomore has just gotten better, but he looked really good when we saw him in what was that, week 5, I think it was, early October. He looked really good then, but this kid had 6 touchdowns, all in the first half to 4 different receivers, finished 14 of 19, 226 yards. What was it? 4 of those drives, I think, were over 50, and none lasted more than 8 plays.
Yeah.
I mean, when you have a team that plays, and we've seen it. So you think about the Buccaneers from 2022 or 2002, okay offense, exceptional defense. And some of those, the 2000 Ravens that had an okay offense, exceptional defense. This Arkadelphia defense is probably the best in class like Coach Shucker had said back in media days in July. But now they're playing really, really well on offense. I mean, just like McCoy has continued to progress, they just seem to get better and better every week. I think this might be, and again, I'm not trying to, live too much in the moment, but right now this could very well be the most dangerous team in 4A.
I agree. And, Gentry coming off that high last week. Yeah, now you got to travel to Arkadelphia. So you got to turn your attention. Yeah, it was good to get that huge road victory going over to DeWitt, long time on the bus, getting back, I think it was, 10 hours total or whatever it was on the road. So, now you got to get ready for Arkadelphia. And, I was talking with Chris Babb last week. Look, Ozark, Cody Wilbanks was out, the starting quarterback for Ozark, and they had a sophomore or freshman starting. And I just couldn't imagine, how big his eyes were going into that game. I remember when I was a junior starting at Hamburg, my first game, they were coming off a state championship appearance. I think they lost to Alma that year. Had a Razorback commit, but their defensive line was like 6'4", 6'5", 6'3", 280, 260. I mean, just long. And, you think how fast and physical this defense is. It's just – they're tough to beat, man. And for Malvern to score 23 points on them was huge, 2 weeks ago. That was something that, they haven't allowed very many points. I mean, they just suffocate teams, and it's constant pressure. And, high school football offenses just break, and is what they do. They, empower the will. But now that McCoy's back, playing well at quarterback, he's found his groove. Trey Shucker's always been a good offensive mind. Even when he was at Searcy, you could kind of tell his time was coming. So when he got to be a head coach, he was going to be a good one. And Kyle, ever since they've had that tough start last year, man, where they started out 0-3, 0-4, and then they beat up on Nashville, and just ran the table from there. You can kind of see this setting up. You really kind of see it all setting up. So, they're tough to beat right now, and it's a collision course. So, it's our job to look ahead, not theirs. But you can't help but kind of salivate. Yeah, if they get past them, Dardanelle is going to be a good matchup. But Arkadelphia and Elkins look to be on a collision course to War Memorial.
And on down to Class 3A, where there is no shortage of great matchups. If you want some in the second round, and there were some in the first round as well. I want to point out Carter Little, because he was a player that had high expectations last year, and unfortunately his season was cut short. And that was one of the things that I was reading Harold McIlvain, who covered this one for the Democrat Gazette, was reading that story. And that was one of the things that he pointed out was he wanted to make sure that he helped his team advance, just because this is an opportunity that he didn't have last year. So Charleston 66-35 over Melbourne, and Little passed for 5 touchdowns, ran for another. So, Charleston, I know that, they might not be the Charleston team of 2022. You got to go play a really good Osceola, but you can never count Ricky May out. He's one of those coaches that just that you look across the state and you just never want to say, like, you never at least want to make a prediction that they're going to lose, because you just never know what could happen in the postseason. Also, too, one of the more interesting matches. What was it? The Atkins score, was it Atkins over Perryville? Yeah. The Atkins 10-7 score over Perryville. I love defensive matchups. I know we had one of these with Highland and Ashdown in Class 4A that we just talked about. But the Atkins 10-7 defensive battle over Perryville, late touchdown by Jaden Martin sealed the deal. And then also a first quarter 34-yard field goal by Kenny Rivas really helped them too. So I don't think we had, a ton of surprises as far as all this. There was pretty much everybody, for the most part, handled their business. But then this week, you look at, I think probably the one that I was the most shocked by, more so the margin of victory, was Rising over Walnut Ridge. That was definitely one, because I felt like we've talked about how deep the 3A3 is all year, and you felt like Walnut Ridge was going to be, a good lower seed there, probably a dangerous matchup. But Kevin, really, if this Rising team, I said it last week, if they play really good defense, they're always going to have a chance. And I know that's cliche for anybody, but just with how physical their running attack is and having 3 running backs that you can rely on, I think that's one that I think that's a team that you just really need to look out for. Now playing against another really tough 3A3 team in Rivercrest, the rematch between Salem and Prescott, Mansfield and Newport. I think that's one that a lot of people are interested in, just because you look, which one of, not Tonio Phillips, the one that was committed to Penn State for Newport.
Andre Barker.
He had a 200-yard, 3-touchdown game last week. Huge game for him. Not really shocking. But how will Mansfield? I'm not going to pick against Mansfield because I've done that too many times and they've proved me wrong. But I think that's going to be a stellar matchup. How will Bismarck? Bismarck is not used to this kind of success. How will they be coming off of the bye week against an Atkins team that squeaked past in their first round matchup? I think you just got so many great matchups in 3A, which that's the case all the time.
Absolutely. And, you look across the board, that's what we were excited about. Yeah, you had two road teams, Atkins and Dumas. We expected Atkins to beat Perryville. I mean, at least I did. I know a couple other people did too. Dumas, congratulations, my man Antonio Lovelady. Had some battles with him back in high school. Getting Dumas to the second round. That southeast corner just continues to produce great football. McGee took it on the chin. It's Newport. I mean, they're rolling right along. But that Mansfield Newport game looks really inviting. Osceola and Charleston, another game. Jessieville 9-2. Congratulations to the Lions. Beat Palestine Wheatley. Them getting to take on Fordyce. Fordyce is going to be tough with all the weapons that they had. Cadillac Ellison had another great performance, on Friday night, putting up 52 points. Yeah, it's not the Hoxie team that we've known. Coach Sears has done a great job there, but it's just down season for them. So really looking forward to second round. Like you said, Rivercrest and Rising. Yeah, it's going to be a tough matchup. It's going to be a really good game. Be interesting to see what comes out. And as the motto this week is rematch week. We've seen it in just about every classification so far. You got Salem and Prescott going back after it again. And then Boonville and Mayflower is kind of intriguing to me because of how Mayflower's played defense. Their defense has played this year. Boonville, Hunter Warren's had a great last 3 or 4 weeks. That should be an intriguing matchup as well.
I was going to bring that up with Boonville and May because you got the defending state champions in Boonville, which obviously, has taken a little bit of a step, not much, but a little. But when you lose a Dax Goff and some of those seniors, that's going to happen. But Mayflower started off, what was it? I think it was 8-0. Yeah, 8-0, and they've lost 2 of their last 3. So they went on a 2-game losing streak, and of course lost that heartbreaker to Atkins, really anybody's ball game, and then rebounded pretty big, actually really big in the first round against Lavaca. So I think that's probably one that I'm going to really be looking at is Mayflower. That's probably the biggest question is how will you play in such a historical environment on the big stage? That's probably the thing that I'm looking for most from the Eagles in that matchup. And then as we close things out here in Class 2A, last but not least, Des Arc over Mineral Springs 30-24. So we mentioned last week was could Mineral Springs have the opposite of what they had last year when they started the season 9-0, dropped their final two, including that upset against Hector in the first round. They hung with the Eagles for a little bit, but ultimately Des Arc was just too much. And then EPC, who's been pretty hot as of late, they squeaked past Gurdon 26-20. Junction City rallying to beat Cross County 36. Of course, that we've talked about how tough that bottom of the bracket is in particular. But Junction City rallying to beat Cross County 36-22. That sets up another rematch. They'll head to Carlisle, a rematch from week 1 that I had a chance to call. And then, on that top half, Kevin, I'm looking at Murfreesboro. And they did play a really banged-up Mark. This wasn't, the Mark Tree team that we've been used to seeing particularly last year when they got hot in the playoffs, and Murfreesboro was the team they took down in the quarterfinals. But I look at it right now, and I know EPC, we've got a rematch of the last year's state championship, and, anything can happen with them. But right now, I think I do like Murfreesboro. They're up against a young and really good Mount Ida team. But that bottom of the bracket, it's really just a toss-up. Conway Christian, they're one of 2 undefeated teams in Class 2A and have played extremely well. Des Arc's been a little bit up and down, but we know they're worth it. Then Carlisle, Junction City. I love the point that you've made about Carlisle and Junction City. Carlisle just seems to have I don't know if light years is the phrase, but they are just definitely better than even as good as they were in week 1. Mm-hmm. Junction City, we don't really know if they're a whole lot better from what we saw in week 1. I mean, it's pretty much the Dominique Grimes show there. But, yeah, that bottom of the bracket, as we expected, still incredibly brutal.
Yeah, and to further on that point, I brought that up on the scoreboard show. I'm glad you mentioned that. I think Carlisle can do more now than what they could with Ty Tanksley back in week 0, week 1. They beat Des Arc 30-6 to open up the season. Then they got Junction 41-20, and then they've rolled ever since. Hazen was, of course, that was a tough game for them. We saw that Conway Christian really rolled. So, I think Carlisle can do a little bit more now. They're a little bit more multiple. They can open up the playbook a little bit more. That defense is still stifling. I don't think Junction City can. I just think it's still the Grimes left, Grimes right. When we saw them in week 1. I figured, man, they could really take advantage on the outsides. They could really stretch the field with the athletes that they have and the speed they have on the corners, and they never did because they didn't have the opportunity to. So if they're able to do that, I think they can give Carlisle a game. I just don't think they will. Conway Christian, this is Coach Kramer's best team. Justin Kramer's been looking forward to this year. Jaron Thomas is rolling along, and I think they take care of business in the Battle of the Eagles. We get the Battle of the Cardinals with Farmington and Camden in Class 5A. All the mascots are battling each other now. So, I think Conway Christian rolls on. They're just set up for destiny right now. Coach Kramer looked forward to this year and said, yeah, this is going to be it. They've been right there all season. Like you said, 1 of 2 undefeated teams. EPC and Bigelow, yeah, we figured this was coming. Bigelow, man, the defense is good, but, man, the offense they're just hit or miss. They played really well against Mount Ida, scored 35 in the first half, but then, fell flat. Yeah, it was an ugly game, kind of wet, raining. We saw that across the state on Friday night, but they took care of business, shut out Poen. So good win there. Mount Ida, man, we knew they beat Bearden. We didn't know they beat them like that. It was 28-0 at one point. They got to the mercy rule and then just kind of let it go from there. So that should be a good game. If maybe a road team upsets, it could be Murfreesboro, but, man, they're playing really good right now, like you said.
Yeah, the Mount Ida is a really interesting case because I know that, Coach White's son is a really good player. I had actually heard back about mid-season, I had heard that he was just really doing well and that he would probably be a force along with maybe 1 or 2 other 9th graders in the playoffs as well. So, 2A, I think that, the bottom, I mean, you like Carlisle probably through that, but, I mean, it's maybe – I do like Murfreesboro probably the best right now out of those matchups at the top, but anything can happen as we have seen in the playoffs. But, of course, you can catch us next week when we'll be going through some of the, I guess, semifinal matchups, quarterfinal matchups for Class 3A and 4A. Man, it's getting here really quick. And I do want to mention, of course, by Kevin, you kind of hinted at it earlier, but it is official. Sean Jackson has resigned as head football coach at Nashville. I did just get the report. So we'll have that on our website, as well as, of course, like I said, by the time that anybody hears this tomorrow, it'll be pretty well-known news. But it is official and it is, as you said, it's kind of the coaching carousel is going to heat up over the next couple of weeks. And so that's one of the first. There's been another one that I've been told not. Yeah, I mean, I was kind of told, but I mean, it's not a secret. It's not one of those. No, it's not. Honestly, you did nothing wrong, because I mean, it's one of those deals where it's posted from what I've gathered. So no, I mean, it's all good. So. Well, that'll do it for episode number 41 of Arkansas Preps Weekly. Again, you can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen or watch. We are there. And also, too, for any volleyball fans that might possibly be listening, we've got our all-star teams that will be out later this week, probably by Thursday. So you can check that out on the naturalstatesportsnetwork.com, as well as Facebook or Twitter. But for Kevin Bohannon and all of us here at Natural State Sports, my name's Kyle Sutherland. We will catch you next week.